With the Knives Out sequel coming onto Netflix tomorrow, I decided that it's time to go back and revisit another movie from the writer and director of the two Knives Out movies, Rian Johnson. This movie's a bit not as well known, a bit obscure. Maybe you heard of it. It's Star Wars The Last Jedi, certainly an uncontroversial topic, and I'm sure that everybody will agree with whatever takes I have about this movie. I know, Jack, nobody will. I've seen this movie a couple times before, and I've kind of oscillated a bit on how I feel about it. I've never thought that it's like my favorite Star Wars movie ever. I've never thought that it's my least favorite Star Wars movie ever. I've kind of oscillated between I like it to, oh, there are some problems that I have with it, and sometimes I can't overlook them. I am interested to go back and take a look at it, especially since I just rewatched Knives Out the other day, and that is one of my favorite movies of all time. So Rian Johnson is a good director, but how did he do with this entry into the Star Wars Skywalker saga? Well, let's go back and take a look. Alright, unironically, something that I think everybody should be able to at least agree upon is this movie has some beautifully shot moments. I mean, the first shot in space, going past all the ships, the battle reflecting off of Poe Dameron's visor while he's charging the Dreadnought in his X-Wing, that's just some cool looking stuff. Now, Poe's snarky, kind of like modern humor conversation with General Hux, I remember laughing at it in the theater, and I still find it amusing. Does it fit in Star Wars? Maybe not 100%, but you know what? Sometimes you need new takes in Star Wars. Is the Skywalker Saga episodic movies the place for that? I don't know exactly. It doesn't fit exactly with the way that the dialogue is written and performed in the other Skywalker Saga movies, which, now that I'm thinking about it, actually have the benefit of 6 of them were George Lucas, like either written or directed, and 2 of them were J.J. Abrams, so there's only 3 visions that have touched the main 9 Star Wars movies, and this is the only one that Rian Johnson did, so that's actually interesting. It doesn't change anything, it's just I never thought about that before. Alright, Luke chucking the lightsaber. It's a bit overdramatic. Certainly shocking the first time that you see it, which is definitely what it's meant for, but shocking isn't always the best upon reflection. I don't actually have as big an issue as some people seem to of Luke Skywalker turning against the Jedi Order and kind of giving up for a couple different reasons. One, even if you do have a problem with that, I don't know if you can entirely blame Rian Johnson for that, because, I mean, the whole plot of The Force Awakens is they need to find the map to Luke Skywalker because he sequestered himself far away from the fight on the secluded planet. So, like, there's not a whole lot of reasons that there could be for that. 2, time passes, right? Like, this is obviously the same human being, but Luke Skywalker has gone through 30 years of stuff between Return of the Jedi and now. We get tiny little glimpses of it in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett, and I kind of hope that stuff continues to flesh out that transition in character, especially as, obviously this is later in the movie, so we'll talk about it in a little bit, but the main lesson that he needs to learn from Yoda in this movie is how to accept failure. Because one of the main lessons that he learned from Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back is do or do not. There is no try. So that's pretty definitive. Like, you either do it or you don't do it. You don't, and obviously the point there is you don't half-ass it. But that means he went and he rebuilt the Jedi Order. We see the beginning of that in The Mandalorian when he takes Baby Yoda. We can see more of it in the comics and some of the books of him training these Padawans, and then in flashbacks throughout the sequel trilogy, we see that he had apprentices, including Ben Solo, who became Kylo Ren, and then they all died. So he did it. He rebuilt the Jedi Order, and giving it his all, giving it his 100%, not trying but doing, he failed. He got all of these kids killed. He got one turned to the dark side, and not only that, it's his own nephew, the child of his 2 closest friends in the whole world, his sister and Han Solo. So yeah, that's pretty, I mean, that's years and years of work to lead to complete failure. So I can see him being this way. And also, it's just a thought that I've had rattling around in my brain for a couple of years now. Obviously, the first movie that came out was A New Hope, and Obi-Wan Kenobi is a hermit on Tatooine. So we always accepted that's where he's going to end up after the prequels. But when you look at the character in the prequels, aside from the at the end of Revenge of the Sith, where they're like, oh, and this will be my mission now, is to go hermit and just live on Tatooine because I have to. Look at the Clone Wars, look at Ewan McGregor's character in the 3 movies. He essentially gives up the fight. And that's why I really loved the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, because it showed how he did give up the fight, but then his reasoning to fight, his belief, his hope is reignited throughout the course of that series. So I think that was really spectacular for his character and bridging his character between the prequels and the original trilogy. So something like that for Luke between the Return of the Jedi and where we see him now in The Last Jedi could be very helpful for bridging that gap and making it a more logical jump that we see happen on screen, rather than just 30 years have passed, a lot has happened. So I can buy it, but I can see why other people don't. Oh. Yeah, the green milk is dumb. There's no skirting around it, and the face that he makes when he drinks it is iconic. It's picked on, it's harped on, and it's memed for a reason. But there's dumb things all throughout the history of Star Wars, so that's not going to detract from my enjoyment of the movie overall. But yeah, it's not a moment that I'm like, oh yeah, drink that green milk, Luke. Alright, knock a couple things out. Leia flying back to the ship using the Force. I don't actually see it as her flying, I see it as her Jedi manipulate objects. She's aiming for the door and trying to pull it towards her. She's not going to pull an entire cruiser ship, so she pulls herself closer to the door. The Porg, I love them. They're adorable. I don't understand the hate. They're such a Star Wars creature. The scene with Chewbacca is funny. I dig them. Lastly, for the stuff that I just watched, the scene where Luke Skywalker goes back on the Millennium Falcon and sees R2-D2 again and lights up like the kid that we first met at the beginning of New Hope. I dig it. He can have all of this weight to him. He's had all of this trauma in his past, but something as simple as reuniting with an old friend lights a spark of something, of someone that he used to be before he got so embittered to the world. And I liked that being what leads him to say, all right, I'll train Rey a little, but just to prove why I shouldn't train her. Yeah, I mean, so far I'm not like, oh, I'm loving this, but I'm not having a bad time. I'm, watching and enjoying. Canto Bight has a jailbreak sequence that I forgot to include of my list of every jailbreak sequence in Star Wars. But that's okay, it would have been pretty low down on the list. Not that it was horrendous or anything, it was just fine. Coincidences like the Codebreaker that could also do this thing that they need happening to be in the same cell as them, him being able to open up the cell door with whatever thing he licked and did. BB-8. I love BB-8. He's cute, but I don't buy him being able to beat up those 3 guards. I do like their escape and tear through the town on the back of those creature things. That's fun. But then when they're like, oh, well, we're stuck here, we have nowhere to go. BB-8 and Hacker Dude happen to have a ship together, and they find them on that exact spot, on that exact cliff, when the police that had been chasing them had lost them. Sure, all Star Wars-y coincidences, but, it's just fine. Canto Bight as a whole, I like the idea there, but I don't think it's executed very well. In fact, the first time that I saw this movie in theaters, I had to pee so bad, and I had to get up and go to the bathroom, and I felt terrible. We saw it opening night. I love Star Wars, so I have never ran to a bathroom and peed so fast and came back and I missed some of the Canto Bight sequence, and it didn't really feel like that I missed much in the movie. I like the themes, I like how it's, oh, these are things that Finn needs to learn for his character growth. He initially sees just the surface level beauty, and Rose tells him about the dirty underside to this place, Canto Bight, that they are all weapons dealers. It's a necessary step on Finn's journey towards going from selfish to selfless with his involvement in the Resistance. But it could have been done better. That's where I'm at with it. I mean, all of the scenes that Daisy Ridley is in are pretty good. She's obviously a great actress. She works great alongside Adam Driver, Mark Hamill, and Andy Serkis as Snoke. I dig the storyline that she's going on, how it parallels with Kylo Ren's story, and the kill of Snoke is really cool. The kind of recreation of the finale of Return of the Jedi with the Emperor-like character and the Darth Vader-like character holding the Jedi captive and forcing them to look at the Rebel fleet being destroyed while they are helpless to try to pull them to the dark side. It's all interesting stuff. Hi, Bruno. The fight scene with the Royal Guards, epic. So cool. I mean, it's just beautiful to look at, and it's so fun to watch. That's probably my favorite scene in this whole movie. I like all of this stuff. It's just so irritating to think about it, or to try to think about it in context with the rest of the trilogy. It so is not satisfying payoffs for the way these questions were posed in The Force Awakens, and then to have the revelations completely undone by stuff in The Rise of Skywalker. It's just so frustrating that this trilogy contradicts itself. There's no one to really blame other than Disney, because they went into this with no centralized plan. So you can blame J.J. Abrams for setup with no ideas of the follow-ups, but the original plan was he wasn't going to do any of the other movies. It was going to be him, then Rian Johnson, and then someone else for the 9th one. And then he just happened to be put back on the 9th one. So then this makes this middle chapter feel so subversive of what came before, and then they pull back on everything after, because there never was a plan, which is just super frustrating. On its own, this stuff, great ideas, there's some good stuff that's put out here. It just, nothing sticks, because the rest of the trilogy doesn't back it up. And yeah, it's just, it could have been good. I think Rian Johnson, obviously, I mean, he did Knives Out, which is a great movie. He's a great writer, he's a great director, but it was poor leadership on the producing side of things from the Disney side of things. I think he would do well with his own Star Wars stuff, but outside of the main trilogy, or outside of the main Skywalker films, that's just not the place to subvert expectations and to change characters that we've already been attached to for so long. We're getting close to the end of the movie. The Holdo maneuver is about to happen, which I don't need to rewatch that scene to say that it's visually stunning. Super cool. The sound design is awesome. The visuals are great. I love the Holdo maneuver. The Holdo stuff itself is frustrating. I understand that the point of her not telling Poe the plan is that he needs to learn to respect the chain of command, he needs to learn these lessons, but they still could have done it without the main source of the conflict there just being, oh, well, they don't feel like talking about it to each other. It's just, you could have just tweaked a couple things and made it so that way she says the plan or the basis of the plan, and he just disagrees with it without knowing the full picture and then goes against it anyway, rather than him stating several times that he isn't aware that there even is a plan and her actively not saying anything. That's frustrating. I think that should have been changed and shifted in the script. But another problem with the sequel trilogy is that Disney mandated that they come out one every 2 years. So one came out in 2015, this came out in 2017, and the last one came out in 2019. That's quick turnaround. Not a whole lot of time to go in and fully develop things, and that can be seen more and more, in my opinion, the farther this trilogy goes along. I think it kind of gets weaker as it goes, as a whole. Again, on its own, this is a really good movie with some really interesting ideas and stuff, but it doesn't fit in well with the rest of the trilogy. So let's finish it up, and then I'll give the rest of my full thoughts on this. Battle on Crate is really cool also, and it's gorgeous to look at. The little janky speeder things with the one little leg underneath guiding them along the salt plains that shoot up the red ash, and then the Falcon coming in for a last minute save. Yeah, it happens a lot in Star Wars, but it's still fun every time, and it makes sense based on what had been established before it in this movie, where everything was, where all the pieces were on the table. It makes a lot of sense for Kylo Ren to go, blow that ship out of the sky, and them all to follow it. I love Finn going, woo, they hate that ship! It's just really cool, and then them diving between the pillars. It's cool stuff. Finn's charge at the laser cannon, ready to sacrifice himself for a greater cause, would have been such a great... I don't want Finn to die. I love that character. I love John Boyega's portrayal of him, but considering they don't do anything interesting with him in Rise of Skywalker, that would have been a great end to his arc from the beginning to now, both in The Force Awakens to the beginning of this movie, and then throughout, going from someone who's just trying to save himself, gets attached to Rey, trying to save himself and his friend, leaving the cause behind, or trying to leave the cause behind, and then sacrificing himself for that cause. That would have been a great, heroic end to him. The music's swell. It could have been a real great moment for this movie, and I like the Rose character. I wish that we got more of her, especially in Rise of Skywalker, but I loved her and her sister's stuff in the Cobalt Squadron book. I think that she works really well for most of this movie as a person to teach Finn to care about the greater cause. And then when he finally does, she rams her speeder into his, which could kill them both, and only by luck do they both survive when he was right there about to save the entire Resistance. I mean, I get her wanting him to live, but that is a dumb way to go about it, and it's just frustrating. Obviously, that is not at all the actress's fault. Kelly Marie Tran does a fantastic job with this character, and all of the racist trolls who were giving her shit deserve to have their access to the internet revoked forever, and to just not have anyone hear their racist, shitty opinions ever again. But that is a frustrating end for her character's journey in this movie. She worked really well as a character to inspire Finn to grow, and then to have that cut off at the end, I don't like it. And we're just about to get to Luke Skywalker's appearance, which is another great instance. This movie has some of the coolest and best moments of the sequel trilogy, between the fight in the throne room, the Holdo maneuver, and then the Luke Skywalker versus Kylo Ren on this planet. Really cool stuff, and again, visually gorgeous, but also some really frustrating moments. I think there's like 20 minutes left in the movie, so I'll be right back. Alright, movie just finished. Luke Skywalker did his badass confrontation with Kylo Ren. The effort of using the Force to project himself across star systems was too much for him to take, and it killed him, which was set up earlier when the Force Skype calls between Kylo Ren and Rey first started, and Kylo Ren, trying to figure out what was going on, was like, "Are you doing this? No, the effort would kill you." So it was set up, and I mean, some people online have been like, oh, well, that's not a power we've seen the Jedi use before. Well, one, gotta have new things. You gotta have new things sometimes. Listen, when The Empire Strikes Back comes out, that was the first time that we'd ever seen a Jedi move a physical object with the Force. They didn't do that in A New Hope. So, I mean, if we just went on what they did in A New Hope, we got Jedi mind tricks, we got making noises in the distance, and we've got feeling presences, and use your feelings to deflect blaster bolts and fire torpedoes down exhaust ports. I mean, you can expand what the Force does. It is allowed. And also, maybe we've never seen it been used before because the effort literally killed Luke Skywalker, one of the greatest Jedi Masters ever. So, yeah, I don't think the Jedi would be whipping that trick out very often. So, I have no problem with that. I think it was an awesome use. Am I sad that Luke Skywalker died? Yes, of course, especially with the hindsight of knowing that Carrie Fisher died between filming The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. And while I think The Rise of Skywalker did pretty well with using deleted scenes and repurposing them to put her in that movie, I don't know, having her have been killed off in The Last Jedi would have been strange as well, but having one of the original three around for The Rise of Skywalker could have made it a different and better movie, especially now that Luke has picked up the spark, regained his hope and his willingness to fight. Would have been interesting to see what he could have done in The Rise of Skywalker, but also it would have detracted from the new hero, so I get it. It is still, of course, sad to see Luke die. That being said, movie ends, and overall, there are parts of it that I really, really, really like, and there are parts of it that I'm like, that line or that joke didn't land, this scene didn't land, this idea didn't go very well. So it's a mixed bag. I can totally see why people hate this movie. I can totally see why people love this movie. I think it is obviously wrong to hate this movie because you are a racist piece of trash who hates Asian and black characters, and also who can't stand the thought of a woman doing things. So all of that's dumb, but there are legitimate criticisms to have with this movie, but there are also, like, I don't really see the argument that this is the worst Star Wars thing ever, because there are some really cool ideas and scenes and moments that are presented in here. Overall, it's a pretty mixed bag. It's not one of my favorite Star Wars movies. I don't think it's worth the amount of hate that it gets, but I can understand hating parts of it because there are parts of it that I certainly don't enjoy. I've seen Knives Out several times now, and every time I am hooked and in and loving it the whole time. I just did a review of that. You can check it out right here. I'm excited to see Glass Onion and Knives Out Story, the sequel, which comes out on Netflix tomorrow. There will be a review for that also coming out tomorrow. So yeah, happy Hanukkah. Let me know what you think down in the comments below, but keep it civil, please. Thank you for watching, and have a good week.